I finally found the parts I need to do the valve shim clearances in this engine. Turns out Triumph Stag uses the same ones. They're 5/8 inch shims, and the reason I couldn't find them is I've been looking for metric. I didn't even think to look for imperial. Stumbled across a forum in America talking about using Jaguar parts to fit Triumphs, and this whole rabbit hole coincidence thing. The good thing is I found a UK supplier for the valve shims I need. I'll let you know about that later. For now, we need to start pulling some things apart so I can do some measurements. First thing I've done is I've used a permanent marker just to mark where the distributor sits. That's going to make getting my timing sorted out afterwards easier, because I can just pop that back on, because I need to remove the distributor. I don't think I need to remove the fuel pump. I need to remove this plate on the end here and just pop this cover off so that we can get to the camshaft itself. Now the Princess is a little bit odd for this sort of era of car, in that it's an overhead camshaft and uses shims and buckets rather than push rods and tappets. It makes it a little bit more difficult to do this job, but it also gives you a much quieter, smoother engine when it is running, which obviously this one hasn't been lately, as you've heard in some of the videos. Everything's nice and stone cold. You have to do all your measurements when it's cold. And yeah, once I pull this apart, the car is disabled until I get the replacement bits and pieces. So wish me luck. Right, the cam box is now split. So this is the top half of the cam box. Fuel pump up there, distributor goes in there. The reason you need to take the distributor out is it meshes with this here. So if you leave the distributor in the top, you can't really take everything off properly. I have discovered that the crankshaft end seal here is weeping just a tiny bit, so that's probably where my oil leak is coming from on that side. I did suspect it was that, but I couldn't prove it. And our next job is to fit these things, and these are a special Churchill made tool. There's your little code on it, and these take the place of the top of the cam box here, because of course with this attached, holding down the camshaft so you can measure everything, you can't actually get in. That's where these really help, because these clamp down and allow you to still get your feeler gauges in to measure everything. These do pop up on eBay occasionally. You can make your own, but if you can find the originals, it is much better. I've tightened these down, and that holds the cam in place. It makes sure all of your clearances are as they should be. When you actually need to rotate the cam to check the next set of clearances, you slacken these off half a turn. Just allows everything to move without springing everything out. Now in the instructions it does say to remove the cam belt. You can do this without doing that, so that's what I'm going to do. But first, I just need to measure these clearances. So we go round, and these need to be pointing up, and once you've got those pointing up, you measure the relevant gap underneath. So this one, for example, is 0.30 millimeters, that is. I'm going to have to convert all of this into imperial because that's what the shims are available in. And I'm not going to record the whole thing, I'm just going to go along, rotate, measure, and just work everything out. And I'll bring you back when I'm ready to take the camshaft out and measure the shims. It's a lot of do this, record things, rotate things, and repeat. Thankfully, this is only a 4-cylinder car. All measured, and the wind is driving me a little bit spare today. My suspicions have been confirmed that it's not that far off and it's not that big a problem. And that's because almost everything measured out at 0.3 millimeter clearance, which is pretty good. That's even across the board, except for 2 and 7, which both measured at 0.25. So those are the shims that I'm going to need to correct, because those are the ones that have a slightly different gap to the rest, and you want these figures, as I understand it, to all be as close as possible. So this is probably where my slight rattle is coming from, is just the variance on these two. That means next stage, getting into the shim buckets and using my little micrometer. Next challenge is getting these shims out that I need to get out. You can see the white dot on the camshaft pulley there. That's where that needs to be. So if I do end up having to take the belt off to do this, I can at least put everything back together the way it should be. Now that's important because unfortunately I need to get this shim out here, which probably means I will have to get the belt off unless I can finagle things around. Usually, when I did this before, I could lift the cam and sort of rotate it out the way, but keep the belt in place. So that's what I'm hoping I can do here, because I really don't like taking these belts on and off. They're very difficult to do for some reason. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, we'll get these clamps off, and then I can show you where the shims actually live. I'm really happy it's only two that it looks like I need to replace. That makes this a very cheap job. Right, we're very careful. I need to get that bucket out of there. Ah, the shim has stayed in it. And the shim lives in there. And that is what we need to measure and replace, because it's probably not quite thick enough. Right, always make sure that you keep everything in order. So I'm going to take this one out, measure it and put it back in until the new parts arrive, and then we'll try and do number 7. Okay, now I've had trouble with understanding these before because I'm not very smart. So I was provided with this very, very useful little diagram which explains how these work. Now you can't use, for measuring these shims, the sort of scissor types where they're just 2 flat blades, because what happens with these shims is they wear. You see that circle? That's where they wear. So you sometimes end up with a little recess in the middle, and if you measure with the scissor types, you measure the edge where the wear isn't, and then you can't get the size correct. So you need to get the type, I mean this is an old style one, but you do need to get the type where it measures a little point in the middle, and then you'll get an accurate measurement. So, if I've understood this correctly, we've got our little shim in there, and on here it describes to me how we measure this. And so our first number is the 0, because of course these are very, very thin, and we can see we've got 3 pips at the bottom, and each one of those pips is 0.5. So that's 0.15, and then our next number is the 5 over here, which is this one. So if I understand that correctly, that's 0.15 and 0.5, which we add together to give us 0.20. I will double check this off camera because, as I've said before, I'm not very smart. But I will write down the numbers exactly as they appear on here, and then somebody more smart than me can actually figure it out properly, so I'll buy the right ones. Yeah, I'm not good with numbers. They're not my friend. But that's how you measure it. Just for reference, the shim lives in the top of that little socket there where you can see the valve stem sticking up, and these just pop on the top of there, and then these buckets go on top of that, which is what the cam lobes ride on, and everything spins around very fast. It is a couple of days later, and happy days, the shims have arrived. And yeah, labelled in the bags so I know which one is which is handy. And it should just be a case of dropping these on, replacing the gasket, cleaning things up, and we should be back in action again. A lot quieter, if I've measured things properly. I'm also going to see if I've got another one of these. I'm pretty sure I have, and yeah. Actually, I might just leave that alone. I was going to replace this, but it means taking the cam belt and stuff off, and I actually just need the car working at this point. So that's a job for another day. I'm not going to deal with that right now. Oh no! I didn't want that to happen. This is the peril of doing these things this way, but all is not lost. All might be lost, the belt has moved. Crap. Oh wait, no it's not, because I did set this and I marked it before I did this, so we're okay. Mild peril. This is the new shim that's in, and you can see it fits properly in the little cup here. That's the thing that's important, and that's how I now know these are 5/8 diameter shims, and they're the same as Triumph Stag. So if you're trying to do one of these, you want to be looking for Triumph Stag. Some Lotus engines, I believe, use the same one. Not Rover P6. Rover P6 has a different style of shim and bucket setup. So best thing to do is, if you find a supplier of these sorts of things, send them an email or give them a phone call, and usually they'll help you out. I've taken the plugs out. I've given it a rotation slowly by hand. Everything seems to be okay. Abundance of caution. This is the 0.3 feeler gauge, and it's a nice snug fit in this one, which was the one that was much too big. So now I need to check this one over here, and if that's also the size gap we're wanting, I can put everything back together. Fingers crossed. That's too big. How much too big? Not much. Well, maybe it is too much. Okay, number 2 looks like it's now 0.4 and everything else is 0.3, which isn't ideal. Maybe I did some maths wrong, I don't know. I've kind of got to button everything up. Oh, what a pain. I've got 7 of the 8 sorted, so it's just this one. I'm going to put the original shim back in, the one that we took out of there.
See if that corrects it, because sometimes, apparently, it does. It's a very finicky job. We are ready to clean everything up and button it back together. I'm as close as I can be with this, and I need the car working again. I might have to revisit this again in a couple of 100 miles, but at least I know how to now. So, this one, and I'm not going to show you me doing it because everything gets covered in oil. This one was the one that needed the big shim. I put the new big shim in, and I put the new shim in on this one, and this gap closed up basically completely. So I took the new shim that I've just bought out of there, put the old one in, and that's now 0.3 like everything else. But this one, it's almost 0.25. It's a little bit tighter than it was before. The book says that you don't need to adjust this until it gets below 0.2, so I think it will be okay. But I also think I'm probably going to have to come back and redo this one, which is the only one I've got a new shim in now. The difficulty is I can only order these sort of like one at a time as I need them. I don't have a big box of them of all the sizes available, so it's a bit of a slog, this job. I'm as far on as I feel like I can comfortably go at the moment. I'm going to clean these surfaces down because you can see the old well seal, which was recommended to me by somebody who knows what they're doing with engines and does stop the cam box leaking and you don't get bits going inside your engine. I have a new gasket to make for this end, and then everything can be bolted back together and we can have a listen. And hopefully it's quieter. Hopefully it doesn't sound exactly the same. I've put it all back together. I've done something wrong. I don't know what I've done wrong, but I've definitely done something wrong. I did crank the engine over by hand to make sure that there were no difficult spots cranking it over, and it was fine. I don't know whether I've messed up the timing or something else. This is why I don't like working on engines. I'm going to seek some advice with some other friends and see if they can help me out with this one, because I don't want to try any further and make the problem worse. This is why I don't do engine work. I'm not very confident with it, and I struggle to get people to help me that are professionals with this kind of work. And yeah, I'm not going to crank it over to show you because I don't want to run the risk of damaging anything any further, but for now I need to seek some advice and I need to figure out what it is I've actually done wrong here. It might be something as simple as I've just put the distributor in wrong. It might be something as serious as I've moved the cam belt timing and bent valves, but I do seem to have compression, so I don't think it's that. It's behaving more like out of order spark plugs or something along those lines. But yeah, I need to come at this with a better headspace than I have at the moment. Oh well. Right, I've had some food, I've had a think, I've checked the timing and that appears to be correct. The distributor appears to be correct, and I've talked to a few friends, had a bit of a think. The last time I had a binding issue on this was down to this gasket here. If you don't put one in, the camshaft binds against this end plate. So I thought, it can't possibly be that. I still have compression, you can hear the compression. You can feel it when you turn the engine. So popped the plate off and took the gasket out. And that stiff spot seems to have gone away. And then I looked at the gasket properly, and can you see how there's sort of like a impression there, just on here? Guess what's been rubbing on the end of the camshaft? So I'm hoping I just trim this out. Now bear in mind this is a gasket I had to make because I didn't have a spare one. So yeah, I'm going to trim this out and see if that solves the problem. I hope it does. because I can't think what else I did wrong. I was very careful with this to make sure everything stayed as it should be. Let's find out. Success! It's on choke at the moment because it's stone cold. Ah, what a frustrating problem. Two things. Let me just turn this off first. So, it's running. I've sorted it out. Two really stupid problems and a good reason why, if you're feeling tired or hungry or whatever, take a break. Talk to some friends, voice some concerns, try and figure it out. Because sometimes that's all you need to do. The two issues were the gasket that I'd made for that end plate was cut slightly wrong, so the opening on it was just catching on the edge of the camshaft and making it bind a little bit. That was an easy fix, so very pleased about that. The other thing I got wrong is the ignition timing. Cam belt's perfectly fine, there's no issues there at all. But I'd put the distributor in at 90 degrees before top dead centre instead of, I think it's 8 degrees before top dead centre. And yeah, so it just didn't want to start because everything was happening at the wrong time. But now, as you've just heard, and you know, full choke, stone cold, it works again. Whether or not it's any quieter, I'll have to wait and see, I guess. I'm going to have to test drive it and find out what it's like. But it does fire up okay. I think we're okay. But I definitely don't want to venture in to do this job again. I think next time I've really got to find somebody else to do it because my confidence with doing engine work is incredibly low. I don't enjoy it and I make silly mistakes because it's probably because it's something I don't enjoy. Anyway, good news. I'm going to test run this and hopefully it's okay. Old cars. Guess what? It's a lot better. Now it's not perfect by any means. You can still hear that one noisy tappet, unfortunately. But it's a lot quieter than it was. Also, it's quite a bit peppier than it was. And it warms up quicker. And it generally just feels nicer to drive. So as frustrating as this job's been, I don't mind too much.